I know of two women in particular that are very important to your life, and they have both passed on. Could you share about what those two women meant in your life?
Well, I consider myself an orphan today, in a weird way. And those of you that pay attention to me have paid attention long enough, you know that I talk about Mo, who's a childhood friend, who we met at 3 years old. And we told this from stage one time, and I never understood this part of his story. But we were doing a presentation together, which was really cool to be a part of. And he talked about his first, I never heard this before that moment. He talked about his first memory in life. And the way he explained it from stage was his first memory in life was 3 seconds before he met me. We were 3 years old. I just moved into the neighborhood. And his mom had brought, our parents knew each other, and his mom brought him to our front door and said, "Hey, I'm going to introduce you to a little boy." And Mo said he was hiding behind her skirt, scared. And his mom was saying, "It's okay. It'll be fine. You'll have a really good time." And she knocked on the door, and there, my mom and I opened up the door, and here I'm 3 and Mo was 3. Well, Mama Benda, that's Mo's mom, was significant in my life in several different things. First off, she was Mo's mom, and therefore my mom, because 48 years later, we're as close as we ever were. And we've been through the ups and downs of life, but to think that for 48 years, he and I have had each other is pretty sensational. But his mom passed away just yesterday. And she was the last of our parents. My parents were both gone. His father passed away. So my mother died, who's the other important woman we're talking about. My mother died. 6 months later, his father died. And then 10 years later, my father died. And now 5 years later, his mother died. So we've become orphans. They were all instrumental in raising us. I had a drawer in his bedroom. He had a drawer in my bedroom. I was included like I was the 10th kid in his family. He was included like he was the 8th kid in my family. And we would call each other to see what we were having for dinner and all of that. And it just sort of lived that way. Well, anyway, Mama Benda has an additional significance to me, interestingly enough, being that I'm in the pool business, is that she was the one who revived me after I drowned. So she brought me back to this place. And that impact, when I look back on it, without her, I wouldn't be here anymore. And now she's gone. So there's an awful lot there. But my mom, in particular, taught me what it was to be a man, more than my dad. My dad traveled. I love my dad for who he was, but I didn't have the connection that I had with my mom. My father traveled my entire childhood. It was part of corporate America. It's what you did. You traveled all over the world. You were gone for 3 months at a time. And although all my older brothers and sisters had him home, by the time I came along, they were much older, and he was in the part of his career where he had to travel. He had to go do things. So he was gone. But my mom was the one that taught me all of the really impactful, important things that helped create and shape me. How to treat people, how to treat women in particular, how to find love for things, love for birds, love for roses, love for, just the intrinsic things that if you stop paying attention, you don't notice them anymore. And she taught me how to love the birds, and we would sit and look at the different birds and try to see how many birds and attract them to a yard so that we could love the experience of the animal, of the thing that's there. And most of us today don't even recognize the birds there, let alone knowing the hundreds of species that hang around us, or roses and flowers for that matter. And I spent my teen years buying my mother flowers and bringing them home, as corny as that seems. But I knew she loved the joy of them, and the net result was I found this tremendous joy in understanding roses and understanding flowers and the beauty and everything that associated with that. And while it's corny in the moment of what it is, when you stretch that out into life and you look at the broad strokes and paint strokes of life, and you realize, if I can learn to enjoy something like this simple flower, how can I enjoy the rest of all of it, and nature, and witness it and experience it? And most of us just put these blinders on, and we get involved in life, and we get so focused on the thing that we miss all of it. We miss the color change. We miss the intricate hues and values and colors of the spring leaves, and we miss all of that. We miss the clouds and the colors in the sky because we're so busy doing something and trying to get somewhere and be something that doesn't really matter if we are it or not. But my mom taught me how to see the simple joys in things, how to find the beauty in a pair of cardinals, or how to find the love for a thing, and just live that experience and live in that moment of that experience. And so I really appreciate that. And she's been gone now for nearly 20 years. I can't even believe that I've not had my mother for 20 years. And I'm so fortunate that I had her as long as I did. But she impacts me every single day. Something comes up that reminds me of my mom, that my mom helped me understand. And she was the one that I was able to go to when I had those questions and I had those things. And today it's a new chapter, because now Mama Benda is gone. She was my other mama, and she's no longer here on this earth. And well, I guess she is here on this earth in some way, but she's not in a physical alive form anymore. And when we stop and take the time, this goes back to this living legendary idea of living authentically who you are, and you learn to appreciate all the moments of what is there. If people would take the time to witness those people in their lives that really help them create the fabric of their being, these are the people that did it for them. I think of like Mo's dad, Mr. B. Mr. Benda was a man of very few words. He said almost no words to us until I was probably 16 years old. I heard him say 3 things probably. But the times he said it, they were always impactful. Now this is the guy that threw us little boys in a car and drove us up north and bought us ice cream, and we spent hours and hours and hours planting trees with him, and we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours with him. Never heard him talk, because when he talked, it had to mean something. There was no small talk. There was no anything. He would say things that I use every day, things like, anything's fast next to a tree. And he would say that, and as a kid you didn't understand, but all of a sudden it makes total sense. Anything is fast next to a tree. And he would say things like, getting to work on time is getting to work late. Getting there early is getting there on time. And I would scratch my head like, what does that mean? Because this is a particular case. I was already building swimming pools. And I was leaving home. I had to come back to get something because I'd forgotten it. And I pulled up the driveway, ran inside, and as I was backing out, he was pulling in, bringing something to my mom and dad. And he's like, where are you going? I said, I got to get to work. I'm late. And that's when he said to me, getting to work on time is getting to work late. Getting to work early is getting to work on time. And that's all he said to me. And I drove away, and he went to do his thing with my mom and dad. And it was those little things that he said that impacted my life in so many ways. And when I was a kid, I thought, oh man, I don't know, Mr. B, it's kind of a weird, it's a weird relationship, it's a weird thing, it's whatever. But I'll tell you what, I am Mr. B. More so than I am Mr. C. While my father was doing what he had to do to allow our family to be what it was, Mr. Benda had greater influence on me, and I realized that my viewpoint of life is very much through Mr. Benda's eyes. And I'm reliving the way he lives over and over and over, and it's pretty spectacular. So you never know who the impact is going to be. I could never have predicted growing up as an adult that I would see life from Mr. Benda's perspective more than I would see it from Mr. Curtis's perspective. But long answer short, Mama Benda, Mama Curtis were 2 sensational women in my life. I'm really fortunate that I grew up in a secure and safe environment that wasn't full of all of the things that a lot of people have to go through. But I'm fortunate enough to realize that and appreciate what it is.